All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh. I'm the engineer of the East Coast Winch Pool at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. Unfortunately, I realized I forgot the power cord for part of my demo, so I apologize for that. I will steal some of the space from Bonnie's table tomorrow, and I will make sure that this is plugged in and everyone can play with it if you'd like. Makes me feel kind of silly carrying around all day because it's heavier than I wanted to carry. We can still talk about it. I tested this and everything. All right. All right. I just figured we'd do a quick review of Appendix A, just covering tension monitoring. This is the graph that shows you why we want to monitor the wires and not pull too hard on them. Essentially, we want to make sure that anywhere that our wires are working at are going to be below where the wire breaks. The short answer, longer answer is we want it to stay below the yield point so we don't damage the cable. And then more Appendix A stuff. So if you have a factor safety of 5, you don't need any monitoring. Factor safety 5 to 2.5, a 3 hertz display with 3 hertz logging, 6-month calibration. Factor safety 2.5 to 1.5, you need 10 hertz display with 20 hertz data logging and a 6-month calibration. There are a number of devices that can do all of these. 3 hertz, the LCI 90 is limited to that, but most other displays can also do that. I know the LCI 90i, the RPC 90X, and many of the vendor-specific displays will also do the lowest safety factors. So we want to collect this data for the tension member history. And so in your tension member history, you have to have the NSF wire ID, the winch or overhandling system identification, the shiv train, lubrication history, cutback history, and cast history. And then when you send samples to the wire pool, they automatically put in the brake tests, I believe. I don't know. I don't have any wire, so don't blame me. Or you still can. So as far as monitoring systems go, systems that I'm aware of out in the field, I think everyone's transitioned away from the 90, and the fleet has a lot of 90Is in it. RPC 90Xs, those are coming online fairly slowly. As of now, I believe there are 4 groups that are using them: BIOS, Lamont Doherty, the Rachel Carson out of Seattle, and East Coast Winch Pool has one on one of our winches. I believe Scripps is in the process of transitioning from the 90i to the 90X. There's still some 3PS systems out. However, they're not 3PS anymore. There's someone else, but still the same hardware. And winch manufacturers are starting to put more of their HMIs on board rather than going with a third-party display solution. So as far as software that's being used in the fleet, there's the MTNW rugged controls. They're now rugged controls software for manufacturers, winch manufacturer provided software. Some people are using the shipboard data collection, or they're using custom developed software that they wrote. I also have my own logger that I wrote for myself, but anyone is welcome to use it, try it out. If you have questions about it, feel free to contact me. I can probably make your logs or ship work with it. Or people are just logging local to the winch. So all of my portable winches, I believe Aaron's, all log directly on the winch itself. That is acceptable. So if you have an LCI 90i, 90X, you can put in a memory card into it and you can log directly there. So your log file, your 20 hertz log file, if you're saving 20 hertz data, is not particularly useful because it's just a lot of numbers. So what the wire pool wants, why I'm presenting something that the wire pool wants, again, I don't know, but is a more simplified history. There is supposed to be a picture of a shift train here, but I made this up really quickly. My program puts out an Excel spreadsheet, which makes people happy. And I identify whether it is a cast, what the cruise was, the date of the cast number, the cable length, maximum tensions, maximum payouts, along with cable installation, and there's places to log when you move it. So now we're going to talk about the 90X. Mine hasn't had any issues. I'm not aware of any issues that the Rachel Carson had, and I'm not aware of any Lamont Doherty issues. However, unfortunately, BIOS had the great luck of running into a whole lot of issues with the 90X. And they had an error, invalid device signature. Turned out a COM port was changed. So if you see this, you now know, look at your COM ports. The display wasn't quite going at 10 hertz, and I don't think the data was storing at 20 hertz. Or it might have been on remote displays. It wasn't. That's been resolved. It was found to be a hardware revision issue interacting with the firmware revision. So that was updated through software or through a firmware update. The new 90Xs should be easier to update, or at least that's what they tell me. I haven't done it yet, and might be field updatable. Like I mentioned before, it wasn't doing the 20 hertz logging, and oh yeah, that's the client displaying all zero. So luckily they've been on it. They've been pretty good. If you have an LCI 90i or RPC 90X and you have an issue with it and you send a message to Rugged Controls, just CC me on it. I don't know why it works, but they will get back to you faster. Apparently they don't like, I talk too much, I guess, and they don't like that. Always spreading rumors about them. But yeah, the root causes of the issues that I talked about were firmware and hardware revisions. I'm going to stick on this. I am trying to get a collection of RPC 90X firmware revisions and hardware revisions in a table, just so we can track those things. So if you end up getting a 90X, let me know, and we can add that information to my table. So the new features that I've found are quite nice are the new communication protocols. There are several new options for communicating, including Modbus. The Ethernet communication is much better than the 90i. Oh, yeah, just said that. Better trend graph. The old 90i with the RV firmware, it was kind of a weird stuttery graph. But again, I'd love to show it to you, but I forgot the power cord. I'll make sure I have one tomorrow. But the trend graph is much smoother, far easier on the eyes than the old one was. Any questions? Did I go fast enough? Did I go too fast? Any other, I don't know, not related yet.
Is that really all the main differences that between 90i and 90x?
It has faster processing power as well. So it can handle multiple winches better. Mentioned the networking has improved significantly. The communication protocols, can't remember them off my top of the head, but when we plug it in tomorrow, we can go through them. We're actually using the one that I have in my shop is using the Modbus protocol that's built into it. That's an industrial protocol, so it's relatively easy for controls engineers to get that data. I think it even has Ethernet IP, which is another industrial protocol.
Way less like even the 90i.
What?
Way less like it's basically a limit.
Yeah.
The interface is way easier. The updates. I hit Carson's. I'm Adam.
Oh.
You know, I
Yeah.
installed Carson. I got it from the hands of the engineer who developed it. And then I talked about Linux file system for 20 minutes. So he took my calls for the next year and a half.
Yep.
And it's great. And the support is much better. They don't keep them like they do the LCIs. Better engineered. We have not been completely issue free. We've had to replace main board in cars twice. I think we got the first one that actually went into production pretty well.
Okay.
Because it was early 2021 when we got it. And it was immediately an improvement, and then it failed a couple of times. And we got it replaced. I want to replace tear out the 90i's with Modbus and replace them with 90.
Yep.
But I have to notify a bunch of technicians before we do that. Scripts was also, I told the start coordinator to do that on Healy as soon as possible because I
Doing that? Yep.
Massive improvement. And I think you mentioned the firmware updates are also a lot easier. They just email them to us and get them.
What did it cost?
We paid about $6,000 for ours.
So that's,
Wasn't bad.
that is an increase over the 90i, but
That includes the load cell for not the block, but the load cell.
okay.
And it was, they fabricated another load cell and adapted it to another block for us for a separate.
So that purchase order included both of those.
Yeah.
So loads, yeah, probably 3. So that's probably about the same price.
Yeah, so it was the LCI and the first load cell for 6-ish thousand, and then the second load cell, there was another bill that I didn't see. So, I will. The one issue we're having right now is we like to run SCS, like to do everything NEMA.
Yep.
And the only NEMA string put out the current firmware revision is custom for a different customer.
Oh,
And so the default string, and I have a troubleshot this particular issue. Steven, who's not here because it's too hot in this room. But the current string has a carriage return in it, in the middle of it, which SES interprets as an error, like, which is just annoying. It's not a problem. We can still get all the frequency.
and in my conversations with Rugged Controls, they've also mentioned the possibility of keeping your 90i to screens and just replacing the boards that interface into it. And so that likely is a cheaper option. I haven't heard if they're still going to do that or not. I do know that they had trouble sourcing new displays, but I think they've worked that out. Thank you. Yeah.
So is the output is networked, it's not serial?
It still has serial output.
32 and 45.
What?
RS-232 and 45.
Yeah. The wiring is a little different, but always is. I don't care. We can.
Diagram.
We can take it out and look at the back if you want.
Can you still do, like, straight casting output on the serial?
Yes.
Like mine was only-
Oh, yeah, you can do serial. That's what I meant by the protocols. There's still the serial. They still have several different strings to choose from.
1, 2, 3 legacy.
1, 2, 3 legacy, and then I think they might even have a 4 now, or a newer one than the 90i.
Also save the configuration. Put in flash push.
Stack on the LCI 90i, Charlie. Very decent.
Should fit in the same hole. So,
I haven't like slated them to other. Yeah, one with single install. Two blocks hooked to a little electrical switch. So back and forth to.
I was gonna bring my board that has my PLCs and that I can plug my remote control into, along with a 90i and a 90, but I didn't finish putting it together. But I'm probably gonna see if the 90X can play well with the 90i, because that might be another good solution, that if you just replace the 90X at the winch and you want to display in the lab, well, you put a 90i in the lab. Anything else specific to the X, or logging in general, or processing logging, or, yep.
I have a question. So how do people in this room deal with zeroing the wire? So our crew staff tends to zero the wire whenever it hits the water line. But then when they pull it up, we get negative wire lengths. So it makes it really hard to see how much wire is actually out versus what the LCI 90 reports.
I don't know what other ships are doing, but that sounds like standard practice, that once it's in the water, once termination is like at the surface, that's usually when they zero the instrument, in my experience.
Because the interface that we're concerned about is when the thing goes in or out of the water, but how much wire is out when it's on the deck is unimportant. The idea of like cats other thing. So that's why we always danger is dry air uncooked.
So I guess, what are you having trouble with?
It's
that?
more just that those max tension events, knowing
Yep.
the actual amount of wire that's out
Okay,
versus what it's reporting, because I've noticed there's drift over time. You know, when they zero it, it's like 12 meters, it changes. It's not consistent.
it's not as consistent as one would like, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I don't have a good answer for that.
I don't know if you're experiencing drift in the zeroing. I mean, anytime we are like deploying or recovering the CTD or mockness, whatever, if something's in the top 100 meters, we have to be there ready for recovery, essentially. So if you have that drift or you lose 12 meters of wire, well, you're already up there for the other 80 meters that it took to get that up to the surface. So we're kind of there as like a redundancy spot check, but as far as like if you're having, I haven't seen drifting numbers for our witches whenever we're like going up and down. It hasn't had incorrect measurements coming back. I mean, I've seen that on vertical winches, but not through our LCIs.
So, yeah,
This is something I noticed.
I would probably take a look to make sure that your counters are set up correctly. You're gonna get better accuracy going with the quadrature rather than direction and speed. They can both work. I had a winch that was losing counts as it cycled back and forth across the shiv, because it wasn't set to quadrature, it was set to speed and direction, and that causes some funny errors. It could also be, it depends on how the system is set up, who's the manufacturer, how the data is getting to the 90i.
Which winch is this for? Is this all of your winches or is it?
I've noticed on all of our.
On all of them?
And this
Could this just be an error of like when?
It also can be, yeah, so this season I'm doing something different and logging which data. But I think it might also be them zeroing it at some time when we're not logging the data. So we lose that zero.
So, like, do you think they're doing a second zero on accident, or it's like at some point it's getting erased during your pass, your zero is getting erased or reset?
Hard to say. That's processing so much data for.
Because I've had level wind issues before where your level wind counts for you as it passes through, but if you don't have enough like tension on the winch at that time, you're not taking an accurate count of your level wind per se, but a lot of that is, yeah, so that can be a potential source. But I mean, if like, I don't know, other than how often you do your set points for your winches and how often you like cover your systems, and then like how often you check the like, daily thing too.
I can't really say I'm work IT, ECWP, we have 3 different.
Okay.
Everyone has their hands.
Yeah.
I guess some other if it's, I know Markey uses encoders on their shivs, so if it's a Markey winch, there could be a damaged encoder on the shiv. That seems like a fairly low possibility. If there's wobble in the shiv and you're moving out of the sensor range for the inductive sensors or magnetic sensors, that can cause some missed counts, which can cause errors in the wire. That's usually, yeah, you'd be gaining wire rather than losing wire.
If you think it's an equipment thing and not a people thing, I would suggest reaching out to the manufacturer and starting a conversation.
It might be a combination of both. most likely.
What kind of winch is it?
I don't have the details on that one.
That's all right.
Especially like migrating zero is probably one of the scariest things because especially the newer automated systems that have things like minimum safe depth for automation system or auto auto renderings, tension controls, things of that nature. If your zero isn't where you expect it to be, then where it automatically turns the brakes on and a person has to operate the joystick to make which move. If that's not the place you think it is, you're going to be in some trouble.
So not usually during pass speeds. It's like, usually if you bring it down to the water line and you bring it down again, shouldn't be too much change. How much do you have? So I just added up the changes to see, and it adds up to meters.
So your log system started to stop it.
That's how we were doing it. I'm logging all the time now to see if it's an issue with humans or if there's an actual issue.
Okay, I'll just measure it from the bottom. Punches on the top.
It's on the operator.
Yeah, because I feel like when I work with Hero Water, and then I signal the operator to zero, they sometimes they do that right at the top, sometimes they hit the button and it happens like 2 meters down. And when it comes back up, it appears off because when they actually hit the button was like at their discretion of like their order of priorities, they're doing it at the same time. We don't.
Yes, if you have like an appointment and you have a serious swell change
Yeah.
or something while you're in a deployment, like you might be deploying for 24 or 12 hours, you know, so
Yeah.
you do a CTD, this is 6 hours CTD, whatever the case may be, if you had a bunch of wire, when it's coming back up, if you have a huge swell change or you had a lot of swell putting it in, your zero is gonna be a lot deeper than when the wind subsides later on. And that, so like that is a case of potential meters, if you have like meters of
You
swell
said you
change.
can keep track of that change.
Yeah,
Because it's a sudden change in the data, you know, from the length suddenly changes between.
yeah, I mean, if you're seeing like legitimate jumps, then.
Well, that shows up as zero, but if you keep track of all the offsets on ours, I have no residuals. So you don't have that zero.
So
In either direction.
Oh, so no, all directions.
I'm just fully rule out this.
Yeah, I mean, you can, especially if you don't have rough conditions, you can like when I zero, I like fully stop everything in zero and take that time, and then I continue, and I say like whatever percent they can drop the package at or whatever. So I don't know if it's just a process of like taking the time to really stop if you're trying to figure out the root of this cause. Like I would just have people stop for like a solid minute at the zero if you can at the surface, yeah. It's like sometimes it's really slowly. You zero assess this fast, you can't even drop that. So otherwise you're gonna get crazy heaves, whatever it is you're playing. Really mess stuff up if you leave it at the surface too long, it's too rough out. But if it's common enough for you guys, I mean, you guys are the Antarctic program too, so the notion's not super forgiving to be like, oh, hold and do the things for now. But if you can, I guess if you can really halt it, really make sure they do that zeroing, and that is like the only way to know if it's human error, if you're just having actual drift.
if you were having multiple zeroing events, you would probably see a discontinuity in the data.
And that's what I'm doing is entering those offsets and
Yeah.
then finding them back up again to see if they go back to zero and they don't.
Have you plotted the data?
I haven't funded it yet, but I at least put it in tabular format.
Okay. Because plotting it will make it really obvious if there's a, oh, they went down 10 meters and zeroed it again, or what have you. You might also see counts if they're being skipped. Then you would see maybe 2 readings that are the same in the data. So in that case, it would be a horizontal line for payout, as opposed to a jump. Yeah. So you're seeing it throughout the cast or only when it's sitting on deck? It's the difference from deployment to
It's
deployment.
like between casts, so.
Okay,
we
so-
start- That's why I'm logging it all the time now, just to see if it is because someone's clicking long and drawn time after it's been zeroed between.
Okay.
Because, you know, if you don't record a zeroing event, that entire change would add up. It's not recorded.
And it's between casts. So
It's
a
not just
cast,
yeah.
a cast typically comes in pretty close within
Yeah.
a couple of,
I mean, once it's on deck, they're not like, they're 3 meters out, they're like, yeah, we see it right there.
I wonder if it's happening on deck. I mean, with it unloaded, the ship could be turning with ship motion.
I can show you my data tomorrow if you want.
Okay.
I got it on my desk laptop.
Any other interest? Questions?
It's just to share a story about line counts and stuff. We've had some line count problems in the past year. Two things, like we use CTD units directly input to the winch system to allow the operator to type in target depths for their winch line. We use CTD units, just like the box. But instead of them adjusting meters to decibel, they just type in a number, goes to decibel. But if the CT fails, it's coming back. I've fixed a problem there, where like, the winch is now always paying attention to wire out, so it gets to 15 meters, brakes just turn off regardless of what decibels are saying. Tell the operators they can't ever be in the decibel thing 50 meters and shallower, just to try and double make sure. But on the other direction, what happens is like the value freezes if the CT fails. So if you type in, yeah, I want to go 4,050 meters, and the bottom is at 4,100. CT fails at 4,000. It's just going to hold 4,000 continuously pay out, trying to reach 4,050, and you slam at the bottom. And so yeah, like you're building a system, like make sure that you've got some way to deal with
Some,
value that can freeze if you're in like an automatic.
so some type of a watchdog or something.
That's not fixed yet. It's not. The only thing we have is that on the way in, you can't smash into the brake. Brakes will turn on at 50 meters. But that's why it's really important that you zero it at the right spot. Because then on another cruise, we actually had some encoders failing. So the line count was what was wrong, and the decibels are what was right. And so we were at like 100 decibels, but the payout was some ridiculously unbelievable number. But that means that none of the auto functions are going to work the right way, and the retrieval process has to change. So it's like 0 is a really important number to have. And then encoders, if it's using encoders, you can measure that by looking up like, okay, per one turn of a shib or a drum, how many encoder counts are there? And if you have the ability with your device to look at encoder counts, you can do some math, like, okay, turn the drum 10 times, see what the count started at, where it ended, and you know how many counts per turn there should be. You can sort of calculate the error percentage. You've got 20% error at 10 turns. Hard time.
So the 90 series does have a troubleshooting page that does have accounts on it. So
Yes.
that's a good way to go through that. And if you're not using an encoder, it's not going to be in the thousands of counts. It'll be in the tens. So it's a little bit easier.
I have to go with the people who know what they actually have. I just collect the data.
Okay. If I want to talk about anything else? No?
I have another question about your program.
Okay.
So I was looking and it basically can detect tasks based on the winch data coming in, correct?
Yes.
So how does it do that?
I look at payout and tension. So if our payout is below a certain value, and you can set that to be whatever you need it to be. My McCartney winches, for instance, unfortunately don't log above 10 meters. So it only, when you pay out 10 meters, it starts logging. And that's a bit unfortunate because if your scientists are doing toyos and they're coming up above 10 meters, every toyo looks like a cast. And suddenly I'm like, hey, Rick, here's a cast that they did in 2 days.
It's like when we're doing jumbo piston coring.
Yep.
Oftentimes when they set it up, it will read like 87 meters out because we have to go like over the aft A-frame all the way over to the starboard side of the A-frame. It's great setup. And then it constantly has a high tension of like 200 pounds on it. And there's other passes we do which are, 100 pounds maximum for the same.
So, yeah, you'd have to take a look at what your
Have to know
typical
what's going
values
on.
are, right? Makes it worth it to tear your load cells. Calibration. Remember, your calibration only has to be at the high point. I don't really care about the data in the middle. Well, no, I should say the wire pool doesn't care about the data in the middle. They only care close to the breaking point of the wire. Any other fun, exciting topics? I thought of one between your presentations yesterday that somehow links to both of them. Just a fun trick to do with media converters, serial to fiber media converters. Sometimes we'll just send signals on the pins. It won't send serial data. It'll just send these pins are doing that, and it works for GPIO. So you can just hit a pin and it'll just transmit that pin, be high or low down at the other end. It's kind of a neat way to get a general purpose IO pin.
Yes, sometimes you can use hardware in ways it's not really intended.
Yeah.
Our ROV. So it's out it's an HTL signal, not a TTL signal. High transistor module signal, 4 volts. And you try to put normal TTL hardware up to that, right? It's the voltage it wants to control. But I think most RS-232 hardware. So you take your HTL signal and you feed it to the RS-232 side of like a RS-232 TTL level shifter. And it does the level shifting for you back down to normal TTL.
It's the transponder, yeah, it's transponder, so you're not doing two-way acoustic, you're doing one-way acoustic.
Maybe we should have a session for stupid hardware tricks.
Yeah.
Well, actually, so we came up with using the serial converter for the IO pins because the one that they had for IO was too slow for what we were doing. But the serial port could go as fast as we wanted it to. All right, we can all go outside. We don't have to sit in here. Is anyone online? Any questions?
No, I asked.
Perfect. That's what I like. That either means I didn't make any sense at all, or I answered everyone's question when I was speaking about it.
Have a quick announcement.
Oh, announcements.
There's going to be 2 buses outside at 4:30. They will leave to the hotel at 4:45. So if you don't have to rush, you could use the restroom or, you know,
Was it good and
just
mysterious?
check in with somebody else if you need to.
The actual.
Oh, and don't